Today we're talking about supporting materials, or all that stuff you'll use to help us believe and understand your speech. And that's exactly what supporting materials happens to be. It is the information that you are going to use to support the claims that you're making in your presentation. Now, before we get to the outside sources of information, a couple of things we want to bring up. First of all, your thesis. Your thesis is the central idea of your speech. So what are you doing with all of this supporting information? Well, it is the foundation. It is what you're using to shore up that central idea and help us believe and understand what it is you're saying. And one of the key pieces of evidence that you can bring in is personal experience. Now, why would you use personal experience? A couple of things. First of all, it shows the audience that you do actually, in fact, know something about this particular topic you're talking about. It also helps them, in some cases, to empathize with you. So there are two reasons why you really want to use personal experience. And another thing, when you're talking about personal experiences, sometimes it can really help to warm up the audience, because again, you're showing that you are believable and you're letting them see inside of you just a little bit. You're not just this figurehead that's standing behind a podium with a bunch of notes talking about something. All right, let's talk about the supporting materials. There are outside sources of information. There are interview sources, there are listening sources, internet sources, and then of course print sources. We're going to talk a little bit about each one of these as we go through here in the next couple of moments. First of all, interview sources. These are experts in a particular field that you're going to be talking about. For example, attorneys. If you're going to be talking about attorneys and what they do, of course you can read about them, you can find articles about them, but what better way to really get some good information, some good personal stories that you can use in your speech than to go interview an attorney. He can tell you things that he's done or things he's had to deal with or particular cases he's worked on. He may not be able to get too specific, but he can give examples. And again, examples, stories. These are things that are very listenable, they're understandable to the audience, and they really help to keep the audience's attention. So if you can go talk to an attorney, great. Same with accountants. If you're talking about tax time, sure, you can read up about it, but go talk to an attorney. He can give you some real details on problems that people might face in preparing their taxes, or what to do in the event that you need an extension. If you're wanting to talk about rebuilding an automobile, go talk to a mechanic or a body shop owner. They can give you specific information that, again, you may or may not be able to find in a book. And in some cases, if this is a person you already know, you may be able to get the information and get it down on paper long before you can track through all the articles and books and find what it is you're wanting to pass along. Plumbers would work in this category as well, carpenters, professors. If you're wanting to talk about nursing, go talk to a professor on campus. Set up an interview and go talk to them. You can get a lot of information that way. Someone who has a disability. So you're talking about a specific disability. Someone who has that you know could give you some great information that you could use. Perhaps a personal story or two again. That's what I'm really looking for when I do interviews, are those personal stories that can really help the audience to pay attention and to home in on what it is you're trying to say. Now, before we pass interviewing, let's talk about a couple of things. First of all, if you're going to do an interview, don't just walk in and say, "Hi, I'm here, I've got my recorder, I'd like to talk to you." Now, set up a time that you're going to come and you're going to interview, and tell them what it is you want to know so that they can be thinking about it a little bit ahead, and then be on time. And if possible, be a minute or two early. That way, if the person you're going to interview is ready and maybe they've got another appointment they've got to get to, you can get started early and you can move on. But if not, at least you're there and you are ready on time when that person can give you the time. Before you leave, double check everything. Make sure that if you're using a recorder that the batteries are good. Make sure you've got a second set of batteries in case the good batteries go bad in the middle of the interview. Make sure your notebook is with you. If you're using a microphone and need microphone cables and that sort of thing, make sure they all are with you and they all work. Plan ahead. Make a list of questions and make them fairly general especially at the beginning. Start with something that's very broad about the topic you're going to be discussing, and then work in a funnel fashion into the more specific questions that you want to know. And while you're using those general questions, be sure that you don't just read from the list of questions. Listen to what this person is telling you, and then when they have something that needs a follow-up question, ask the follow-up question. Does two things for you. One, gets you more information, gets you more detailed information, and two, it shows this person that you're actually listening to what they're saying. So they're probably going to open up and give you more information as the interview progresses. Again, use open-ended questions. Do not, in most cases, don't use yes/no questions. The reason being, you're there for information, and asking them a question that's going to end with yes or no probably isn't going to give you a lot of detail, unless you ask them a question and they answer yes, and then you say, okay, why? Then you turned it into an open-ended question. But try to be, with your questions, try to plan ahead so that you have mainly open-ended questions all the way through. Dress appropriately. If you're going to someone's law office, don't go in looking like you're going to a skate party, or you're headed out on your motorcycle for a cross-country trip. Go in dressed appropriately for the office so that you fit right in and everyone is more comfortable. And then finally, conducting the interview on time. All right, listening sources. That can be television, that can be radio, that can be podcasts. With television, if you know there's a program coming up and you want to just tape it and get the information from that, that's fine. If it's from a past broadcast and you don't know how to get in touch or how to get it, you might go to the OSU library and go to ProQuest Direct. It has some transcripts from television programs in the past, news programs, that sort of thing. It also does have some newspaper transcripts and all as well. Again, that's ProQuest Direct. You can see it on your on the PowerPoint that's accompanying this. Another thing you can do, if you have access to LexisNexis, that also has a very, very good database of transcripts from television news programs. Radio, kind of tough to get transcripts. You might be able to get the radio station to provide you with a CD of the program you're wanting, but that's very difficult in most cases to do. For radio, probably this needs to be something you either hear while you're listening and you transcribe it, or you want to, it's coming up, it's a program you're going to want to get some information from, so record it and then transcribe it. You may also be able to get it from radio by downloading a podcast. Sometimes that may be the easiest thing to do. Internet sources, you've got Google Scholar, you've got EBSCOhost, online magazines, online journals. EBSCOhost is available through the OSU Library. Google Scholar also available through OSU Library. Now you can just go to Google. You don't have to go into the library. Just from your web browser, go to Google, type in Google Scholar, and that will get you there. The one problem with going that route, sometimes if you are not going through your library, the company that has the rights to the piece of information you're wanting may want to charge you for that piece of information, or you may have to join their service. If that's the case, back out, go through the library, and chances are the library or the university already has an agreement with the company that owns the rights to that piece of information, and you can get it for free. Same with online magazines and journals. Best way to get those without having to pay for them, and sometimes you don't have to pay for them. You can go to USA Today or Time Magazine. Usually you can get pretty much what you want, but if you go through the university, chances are you can get it just as easily without having to pay any type of subscription fee for that. Print sources, these are readily available, like government documents and professional periodicals. For example, if you're wanting something from the Department of Health, go to the Department of Health website, and you'll be able to download all kinds of information, possibly order books or whatever, and a lot of times that's free of charge. Popular periodicals like a Time Magazine or Newsweek or Popular Mechanics or Sports Illustrated, those are usually available online. One thing you might want to avoid is pulp periodicals like, let's say National Enquirer or some of those types of magazines. Chances are they're not very credible, and we'll talk about credible in just a moment. There are brochures, pamphlets, books, Of course, now the brochures and the pamphlets, let's say you're talking to an attorney and he's got pamphlets on the subject that you're discussing. Well, certainly that is useful as a source of information for you. And then, of course, there are those library databases that we've been talking about here just a moment ago. Now, a couple of other things to note. With research, there are 3 C's you need to keep in mind. And this will probably be something on the test, too, so you might want to make sure you remember these 3. Is this information that you are getting current? Number 1. It's current, credible, and comprehensive. Let's talk about current. If you're talking about a battle from the Civil War, sure, a newspaper article from the 1860s will work fine. But if you are talking about something on computers or the space shuttle, your chances are that anything that's over a year old might be a little outdated. So make sure that it is current to the topic that you are talking about. Is it credible? Can we believe the source? Again, let's go back to National Enquirer. Do you really believe that the National Enquirer has the latest on space aliens? There are lots of there are things like that that you really want to be thinking about when you pull from your sources. And is it comprehensive? Does it consider all sides? You want to be credible yourself as a speaker. It's hard to be credible if you are focused only on one side of an issue. Be able to show your audience that you have considered other opinions, other ideas, other issues other than the one that you have, and be able to show why maybe they don't fit into your way of thinking. That's the way to be comprehensive. And then finally, as you're going through all of this and finding all of these sources, go ahead and create your bibliography as you go along. You can either handwrite it out or you can go ahead and type it up on a piece of paper as you go along, and in that way when you are through with all of your research, your bibliography sheet is already completed. A couple of reasons for doing that. One, it's just a pain to have to go back and find all of these pieces of information later on. And 2, in some cases, when you're in these huge data files like you'll find through the library's website, you may find this piece of information today and you may not be able to find it again tomorrow, because there are thousands of journals and articles that are in that database. So go ahead and get that information now. You want the author's name, you want the year that it was published, you want the magazine, the name of the article, you want the journal name or magazine name or book name that it was published in, and who published, and that sort of thing. So go ahead and create that all at one time, and then you'll be done and ready to go with your sources.